1:22.8. Very, very impressive time for the former American Le Mans Series driver and champion indeed. And Louis Schreiber will be one to watch in the 1:11 as the cars roll out of pit lane again. Everyone hustling to get out onto this circuit and maximise the 45 minutes. In Pro 1500, it was Nick D'Orlando that set the benchmark, and he's been very quick of late and has closed in on his teammate Jordan Missick. Just 3 points separates them in the Pro 1500 Championship. Spencer Schmidt should be one to watch for as well. He's driving for the local team, Radical Northwest Cameron Racing, based out of Sonoma Raceway, and I wouldn't be surprised if the number 19 is particularly quick. Of course, number 19 is Steve Cameron's famous racing number, and he likes to get that out. We've got a car just stationary. It looks like it's in a bit of an odd place there, coming out of pit lane. Has somehow...
No, he's actually on the outside of turn 1.
Yeah, it's made its way to the outside.
How'd you get out on the track?
Right, so exactly, how did it skip across the track, or what happened there? In the Pro 1340 class, it was Evan Wolf who was quickest.
A red flagging it.
Mike Anzaldi, so red flag already. Mike Anzaldi was the quickest in the session, the 61 of Mike Anzaldi, and we mentioned that he had an issue at Road America in his Pro 1500 class. And
here's what happened.
Yeah, so it looks like the car's actually, instead of following the other cars down through the exit, so a very, very long pit lane here, it's already gone to the track. But it still looks like it's had some kind of issue, doesn't it? And I just wonder whether the driver has realised an issue and has elected to try and get somewhat out of harm's way with 30-odd cars behind him coming down pit lane.
Yeah, that's what it looked like to me. I think he missed it when he came out of the racing pit lane and actually went right onto the track instead of following the lane that feeds the cars back actually out on the track. That's the old motorcycle entry lane that brings them out just in turn 2.
But of course, if he had an issue in that car, which is what we fully suspect, he had really nowhere to go. 20-odd, 30 cars behind him.
He could have fallen in at the rear of the pack.
Couldn't have really pulled off left, though, and I think that's why he's elected. Anyway, Scott Elkins, our race director, has elected to throw the red, and everyone will reset here for another dramatic launch out of pit lane. It's always fun to watch 30 radicals release from the boxes, and we're about to do all of that all over again. It was Mike Anzaldi who was fastest in Pro 1340. He'd had a big crash at Road America, has elected to use his spare car, which happens to be the lesser of the 2 engine capacities in the SR3 machine. So rather than racing his typical Pro 1500 class car, he's in 1340 this weekend. Stunning sights, the sea of colour from WeatherTech Raceway, Laguna Seca. All of the cars lined up in their boxes, and always fun to be at these IndyCar events. The crowd, the atmosphere, of course, all the infrastructure from the IndyCar teams out in pit lane, and we'll be ready to go back once again.
Well, temps are heating up, and the track temperature is up as well. We noticed in the Porsche Cup practice, the times were slower than they were in the first session earlier this morning. Do you anticipate a drop-off for the Radical cars in this session, or do you think that they should improve their times for earlier?
Well, look, it was a very long session, so I guess those that are at the point end of the field, they're in their groove quite quickly, and perhaps we will see the times start to fall off a little bit as the track surface heated up, and that's degrading the grip levels. But I think for a lot of drivers, they're still finding their feet. They've only been out on this circuit once. There's a lot of new drivers in the series this year, a lot of people that are either not familiar with WeatherTech Raceway or not familiar with a Radical around WeatherTech Raceway at Laguna Seca. So I wouldn't be surprised if we start to see a bit of movement. The Platinum class cars, people with some work to do, Clint Field in the 36, who we saw in the gravel trap in that session 1. I noticed there was a rear diffuser that needed to be replaced on the 36 One Motorsports car. Greg Gorski was quick early on in the session, but fell back. He was only 10th fastest overall in session 1. I wouldn't be surprised if the 24 machine EVR Racing. And the green flag flies again. And again, cars come trundling out. So hopefully this will be a standard operating procedure down pit lane and that long exit. And we'll get going again. Beautiful weather here this weekend. It's been quite cool. But obviously low air temperatures means high horsepower, and as you mentioned, this morning's conditions very good for fast lap times.
Yeah, excellent. Cool, overcast weather, not a lot of hot sun. The track temperature was cool. And this is a long session, though. We've got 45 minutes. They've got plenty of time before they come out. They'll be the last group out later today for their qualifying session at the end of track activities on Friday, the first day of the Firestone Indy Monterey Grand Prix.
And that will be quite a quick session, only 25 minutes. Of course, around here with the gravel traps, extremely important to bank a lap early. You never know what's going to happen with red flags in qualifying at Laguna Seca. Chances are you're going to get one at some point. And you can just see Mike Anzaldi to the left in that Williams-esque liveried car, the sort of the Canon Williams liveried car, and Wayne Williams coming through there as well, and a few guys just jockeying for position, trying to find some clean air before they start their first flyer. And after that, if you like, full start to this practice session, I think a lot of drivers will be pretty eager to get on and just start working away at their programs. In terms of regulations, the cars are spec cars, very similar under the skin. So all the cars use the same dampers. There are spring changes that you can do. These dampers are adjustable. There are also front and rear sway bars that can be altered. The ride height can be altered. The rake of the car, so how high the front of the car as compared to the rear of the car is. There is a minimum ride height for the overall machine. Minimum weight. Wing adjustment. The cars can run dive planes on the front to add a little bit more aero to the front, but so lots of little tweaks can be made, but the biggest contributing factor, of course, is the squishy bit in between the pedals and the steering wheel. And that's what makes spec racing, and in particular radical spec racing, so good, is that the cars are all evenly matched. You can work with a driver coach, work with your engineers and team members to work away at your craft, and these cars are producing a lot of top talent. Austin Riley has a bit of a lock-up into the corkscrew. Just had 5 drivers, former Radical Cup competitors at Le Mans, one taking a win, but Joy Garg taking the win in LMP2. John Faub was there, George Kurtz was also there, and so too PJ Hyatt, who finished 6th in LMP2 class. And both Garg and Hyatt were on the podium pretty recently in this series. In fact, PJ Hyatt was on the podium at Barber just a couple of races ago. And so great to see the talent rise up through the ranks and come out of the Radical Series, whether they're drivers that are young guns looking to make a mark, or veteran drivers, or those that have just come to the sport later in life. And a lot of people coming out of country clubs around the nation. Got some big contingents of drivers from different teams. Crown Concepts with Apex Motor Club out of Arizona. 5 cars on the grid this weekend. Cameron Racing, Radical Northwest fielding 6. And then another driver, Richard McDougall, a fellow Aussie, here this weekend. He's also effectively out of that stable. So 7 Californians on the grid. Amit Patel having his first crack at a Radical Cup North America event. Arul Venkatesh, one of the regulars for Cameron Racing. He should be one to watch in the number 13. I guess unlucky for most, lucky for him. And Corey Nouveau has been quick. In fact, he took a gold class win at Road America. Jeff Ramsey joins the platinum class ranks. Brian Antle also making the start here out at Laguna Seca, and that's what's great about this series. We have so many guys that follow the championship through and through, but a lot of locals stepping up to the big time whenever the series rolls into their neck of the woods. One Motorsports out of Nevada, fielding 4 cars, and it's the father and son show there. It's Chip Romer and Matt Romer, and then Clint Field and John Field. Quite a few fathers and sons. There's another combo in Blake McGovern and Keith McGovern. And someone just picking up a little bit of the Californian dust. So, looking at the lap charts and the leaderboard at the moment, it's a 1:23.8 for Louis Schreiber. So he's found some pace that nearly matches John Field's time from earlier today. Nick D'Orlando's definitely the quickest and most comfortable in Pro 1500 at the moment.
Yeah, Field, if I remember, I got into the 122s in the morning session, a 122.818. And you were thinking, well, maybe they'll get down into the 121s. I think that's going to be a tall order, possibly later in the day when they do their qualifying session at 5 o'clock.
Absolutely. I think qualifying is going to get interesting. The championships are alive, Pro 1500 in particular, with only 3 points separating them. Suelo Almeida has taken over the lead in the championship in Pro 1340 from Chris McMurray. And watch out for McMurray to try and claw his way back there. And of course in the Platinum class, I think there's a few drivers just vying for race wins this weekend. Louis Schreiber will be one of them. He was unlucky not to get a win really at his home track at Road America. A guy that was born and raised in Wisconsin and always wanted to go racing, lucky enough to be good enough in business to do just that, and always a fierce competitor in the 111. And that number relates to the fact that he's Louis Schreiber III.
Yeah, I see more side-by-side racing in different parts of the track with this group than any other group that competes here.
Absolutely, and I think the multi-class racing element, obviously 3 classes. We actually also have a subclass, so the Platinum class cars with the higher horsepower engines, 430 brake horse, from that Ford EcoBoost powered Radical SR10 machine. It's the big sister of the SR3s, really Radical's most popular car around the world. In fact, we're coming up soon to 1,700 SR3s, and I believe that one will be going to our Californian dealer, chassis number 1,700, would you believe, of SR3s being produced and delivered around the world. And that's the chassis that's used for both the Pro 1500 and Pro 1340 classes. The engine in the back of that is a motorcycle drive power plant. It starts its life as a Suzuki engine, but is very quickly modified by Radical and really completely rebuilt by the factory in Peterborough in the UK. Austin Riley with some pace there going through. It looked like Chris McMurray also on a flyer there in the 1340 class. We'll see what he can do. You can follow along with Chris McMurray this year on racer.com. He's got a web series, if you will, of videos, some stories from the Radical Cup paddock. He's interviewing different people, some of the alumni that's made it their way to Le Mans, other young drivers. The latest episode, I believe, is all about Suelo Almeida and his rise from the virtual world to the real world, and I think probably some of the competition that Chris McMurray and Suelo Almeida's seen between themselves. They've had a pretty strong rivalry throughout the series so far. In fact, it's fair to say it all started with a bit of grief. a bit of a hip and shoulder. Chris McMurray, elbows out all the time, and Suelio Almeida kind of coming to grips with what real world racing's all about. And now, Chris saying that Suelio learns quickly that he is very, very aggressive and made a tremendous pass from a long way back at Road America. Set Chris up beautifully, and Chris had to tip his hat at the young kid after the fact. Jordan Missig now has set the time to beat in Pro 1500 a 1:24.5. So he has nearly gone a full second quicker than his teammate Nick D'Orlando. Missig with something to prove this weekend. He'd had a strong start to the season, had the points lead, quite a comfortable one, and then it all unraveled last or 2 weekends ago at Road America. Not all his doing, just had a bit of a messy weekend. Got hit by another competitor. That sort of had an issue, gave him an issue in the qualifying session. Just had a rough couple of races, and he's got plenty to play with. He wants to come away with a Radical Championship at the end of this year. That was the whole objective of him joining the Graham Rahal ranks, and he also acts as the chief instructor out at Autobahn Country Club, another location with lots and lots of radicals on site. So Spencer Smith for the local race team, Cameron Racing Radical Northwest. Third quickest, Mac Roma in fourth in Pro 1500. That's impressive for him. Austin Riley lapping quick in that Dayglow yellow and blue car as well. He rounds out the top 5 in terms of pace that we've seen so far this session. Jack Yang in the 21, the white Group A car, will also be one to look out for. He's just come off his maiden debut win in the series last time out. Pro 1340, it's still Mike Anzaldi, who seems to have a bit over everyone else, and it's interesting that Anzaldi coming out of the faster car. Sometimes it's the drivers that step up from the 1340, a real momentum car that find it easy to apply their craft to the faster cars and are instantly on the pace. In this case, it's the 1500 driver throttling back, if you will, to the slower car, but feeling very comfortable. And perhaps that just shows the relative competition in those two classes, as off goes very, very wide Wayne Williams, and that was a huge off. That was, and he's still hanging it out. The dirt track star taken to the dirt here at WeatherTech Raceway, and Williams back on track. But that was a massive moment. You could see the car full opposite lock and sliding through the gravel.
Yeah, he was coming out at 6. Looks like he got at least 2 wheels off driver's right off into the dirt, but he kept it pointed in the right direction and recovered. He kept it on the track up to the top of the hill. I noticed that we've got quicker times in this session for a lot of your drivers than they had in the morning session, so they are continuing to improve on their lap times, and we look forward to even more improvement when qualifying starts at 5 o'clock this afternoon.
And it's really going to be tight, isn't it? Clint Field within a tenth of Louis Schreiber at the top of the Platinum chart. Chip Romer's also in there. In fact, the top 3 in Platinum covered by less than a tenth of a second, would you believe? So that's unbelievable stuff. John Field right in the mix. He's been relegated to third fastest. That was the guy that was fastest in the session this morning. Greg Gorski's also in the hunt. So not much between them. And as you mentioned, it's the same thing throughout the 3 classes. Very, very competitive. Pro 1500. Second quickest at the moment, D'Orlando with a 25.3. Then it's a 25.6 for Matt Roma. Spencer Schmidt, 25.9. Austin Riley, 26.1. So Jordan Missig is the outlier there. He's in his own league at a 24.5. But everyone else within a second too. And then Pro 1340, Chris McMurray's just done his best a 1:28.1. It's still not good enough to eclipse Mike Anzaldi at a 1:27.4. Blake McGovern is also quick. There's Mike Anzaldi with John Field in that menacing red and black machine just behind him, and Field looked like he was hustling hard. We'll hope to get Anzaldi out of the way. Of course, the trick with multi-class racing is it's sometimes a bit of a game of chess, and you can use those guys as pawns. Obviously, the race director and the other racers want to see the best possible racing, and that would be a little bit of etiquette. If there's a slower car, they need to move out of the way of the leaders. But having said that, everyone's out there racing for their own position and for 3 class wins. So at the end of the day, everyone's entitled to use the racetrack.
Do you get much movement between the classes? Do some of the drivers in the 1340 class move up to 1500?
Absolutely. It's quite often that we see that, and really the introduction of the Platinum class has been fantastic because so many drivers do make the progression from the 1340 ranks. Typically they're using those cars at country club racetracks. We've had another car run wide there in the background, and then they'll step up to Pro 1500. I think the 1500 class is arguably our most competitive with all of the young guns that it attracts. It's just a very well balanced car, very very strong racecraft in the Pro 1500 class. And then once drivers reach 30 years of age, they're eligible to step up to the Platinum class. And that's something we do in this series, really we want to retain that competition of the young guns in the Pro 1500s. But a number of drivers stepping up from the SR3 to the SR10. And in fact, if we look down drivers in that class, Louis Schreiber's a good example, Greg Gorski as well. So absolutely.
So there is an age barrier then?
There is for Platinum class.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's an artificial one. We know for a fact that the young guns can drive the Platinum class cars just as quickly. And in fact, Raiden Nickel, who starred out at Barber Motorsports Park earlier this year, has found tremendous success racing the SR10s in the PSSA SVRA competition against other manufacturers like the Revolution and the Wolf and others, and proving that SR10s might. But here the Platinum class cars are reserved for the more veteran drivers, and it works well having the young guns fighting for wins in Pro 1500 and the veterans in the Platinum class. We also recognize the slightly older drivers in Pro 1500. There's actually a winner's trophy for the gold class element of Pro 1500, just because the competition is so strong. And again, we have guys entering the series a little bit later than life, and all of a sudden they're up against the superstars of tomorrow.
That's a big hill to climb.
It is, and Chris McMurray has just climbed a bit of a hill because he's just gone quicker than Mike Anzaldi. So the number 2 Racer.com car of Chris McMurray is now fastest in Pro 1340. Jordan Missing still has the benchmark in the 1500 class, but Nick Diolindo has closing in. He's at a 1:24.7, so there's only 2/10 there for the top couple in Pro 1500. And in Platinum, Louis Schreiber is quickest at the moment with a 1:23.6.
Not quickest by much.
Not quickest by much, a 1:23.7 for Clintfield. And as we mentioned before, the top 4 in Platinum covered by just a couple of tenths. In fact, it's about a tenth and a half down to 4th position at John Field. So that was Chip Romer just navigating a slower car there at the top of the corkscrew and going around the long way around.
Still got about 20 minutes left in the session.
Yeah, and I suspect you'll see quite a few drivers running through pit lane. Race 3 is a mandatory pit stop. They do need to practice the pit lane delta at 60 seconds from board to board, so from pit in to pit out. And that means at 40 miles an hour, it's about 24 seconds, I believe, from pit in to pit out. So therefore, 60 minus 24, and a little bit of arithmetic for accelerating and de-accelerating and stopping the boxes. Going to look at a stationary time around, again, around 30 seconds or so, a bit longer perhaps. But when they do that race 3 pit stop.
So it's a mandatory stop.
Mandatory stop. It starts 15 minutes into the race, that window finishes 25 minutes in. So, like it did last year, it typically throws a bit of a cat amongst the pigeons and really allows a few other people to come up through the ranks. And it was certainly part of the championship deciding battle last year. In fact, when we look at this circuit and the excitement that it's provided over the years, Laguna Seca has always been a strong one for the Radical Cup Series. And that was definitely the case last year. A battle that raged down to the wire. Danny Dashelski, Nick Persing. And it came down to that final set of pit stops. Persing's team, Radical Northwest, electing him to remain out. And they waited until that pit lane was absolutely clear of cars, then brought him in, and he had a very quick run, hitting his marks, making sure he got that delta correct. But overall, just having a very clean run through the pit entry and pit exit, and of course it's very, very long here, so it's very easy to get held up by a slower car. And that's exactly what happened to Danny Dashelski from Wisco Racing. He was unlucky in that sense, and the tides turned.
So there's some strategy involved as well, and there's only a 10-minute window within which you must make that stop.
Correct. So at the end of the day, you've got to decide pretty quickly whether you're going to stop early and hope for the undercut, elect to stay out there, hope for a little bit of fresh air and get the overcut, or elect to stay out because if a full course caution comes out, you can pit under yellow. But you can't get caught out. If you don't stop at all within that window, it's basically you go to the back of the results. So not worth doing that, and not worth short stopping, because if you're short, you'll get a drive-through penalty added. And we've had a spin there and a bit more commotion out of turn 2, and the hairpin, Andretti hairpins caused a little bit of chaos in both sessions today.
It certainly has. What's the penalty for exceeding the speed limit in the pit lane? The drive-through?
Drive-through as well. Got another car off there. That's turn 4.
Turn
correct?
4, yeah.
So the exit of turn 4, and I suspect we might neutralize this session in just a moment. It's 20 minutes remaining. Just looking down to see the starter stand, and at the moment race control just trying to clear, or trying to let that car clear on its own.
There's a train at the top of the hill on the video screen.
Yeah, the cars look wonderful, don't they, streaming through this circuit. That big fast climb through those 90-degree corners, first at turn 3, then turn 4. Then you switch back from the right-handers to the left-handers, and it's turn 5, turn 6, cresting the hill, and then down into the famous corkscrew. I don't think a lot of people believe the elevation change until they come and see it. It's sort of like wandering through the tunnel at Daytona and looking back up. And seeing that banking, it's the same impression here. When you actually see the corkscrew for the first time, it's quite phenomenal.
Yeah, the best way to realize how big a drop is to go up there on foot and walk it. There is a trail on the inside of the fence.
And great spectating, great
it's
viewing
great
up there as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. It's a lot of good spots around this circuit actually for spectators, where you can see a lot of the circuit. I'm sure there's going to be tens of thousands of people streaming in tomorrow for this Firestone Grand Prix of Monterey. So, John Fields looking pretty racy again. He's done a 1:23.1. And that's now the quickest time in the Platinum class. That, I dare say, may be a new track lap record for Radical Cup and the Platinum class. 1:23.1. I wondered whether we were going to get into the 22s, and I think we will.
Yeah. Now, I assume that a track record has to be set during a qualifying or during a race, not during practice. That doesn't count.
Yes, you've got me on the technicalities there, mate. Absolutely. Yeah, it's definitely the fastest time I've seen around here from a Radical Platinum class car. But you're right. To get the actual record, he's going to have to set that really in a race, of course, his qualifying lap records as well.
But it's a preview of what can come.
Absolutely. And look, we don't know if the cars are running exactly to weight and all these other things at the moment. It is conceivable. Of course, in theory, they should be, but typically the cars are not impounded after after a practice session. Of course, they will be impounded after qualifying, and that will be the indicative pace. But so far, the temperature, track conditions, I think we're set for some fast lap times this afternoon.
Absolutely.
Just got to make sure the drivers stay awake.
Well, we've got less than 10 minutes to go in the session.
Yeah, they don't have long to get through this one. And we'll go through some of these times again.
The drivers have probably learned everything they're going to learn about what they can do to the car and what's going to work better and what's not going to work in terms of setup and any changes they might be making. This is, you can look at this as a final tune-up before they actually come out and qualify at the end of the day.
Absolutely. That's exactly what these guys are using this, and the teams, the driver coaches, everyone looking at the data and the video after this one, trying to work out what they can do better. Of course, qualifying is a bit different to racing too, and these 45-minute sessions allow the teams and drivers to really put in some long runs, understand how the car evolves over a number of laps. The Hankook tyre is very good. It generally gets a little bit better with time. And so, particularly for the SR3s, the longer that you're running on that tyre, it just seems to get in a little bit of a sweet spot. I think the sidewall of the tyre just starts to heat up and become a little bit more malleable, starts to generate a little bit more grip typically. So we'll see that play out in qualifying, no doubt, where the lap times will come later and later in the session. Jack Yang's impressing me. 8th quickest overall at the moment, a 1:25.1, and a 1:25 flat. He's just done, and the nice thing about Jack is he's just come off a win, and I think he's starting to really come to grips, perhaps not just with the car, but with his own confidence and that win. It's amazing how standing on the top step of the podium changes everything. Once you realize you can do it, it's a different perspective. You know you want to do it, but until you actually go and do it, it's something that unlocks something in the brain, and all of a sudden you've got this confidence. You realize that it's possible, that it truly is achievable, and it's so often that we see drivers who have just found some success continue on that streak, and Jack Yang is looking good, 3rd quickest in Pro 1500.
Yeah, it's the confidence factor. I think you hit it on the head. Once they achieve that, they know it's doable and they can do it. It helps them go even quicker. So it's a boost to them, and it's also a way for them to better their lap times going forward.
Yeah, we're definitely going to see, I think, some fireworks in the 3 races this weekend. Multi-class racing, very competitive classes. We've got some, typically have a few out-of-class cars, if you like, or some slower guys that start to hustle and create some opportunities, but perhaps more so create some panic when they're around some out-of-class cars, and that always tends to breed a little bit of action. Of course, these guys are all out there trying to get the best possible result, and no doubt it's going to be interesting watching the 1500s, the front runners interact with some of those platinum class cars. Similarly, the front runners in 1340 interact with the 1500 drivers. The race director was pretty clear in the briefing this morning, just a preliminary briefing before we got practice underway, but he's very conscious that he wants there to be a bit more etiquette between the classes.
Now, are there any team orders? Do teammates help each other?
We've certainly seen that before. I mean, obviously, it's an individual sport. There is a team championship, but unlike, say, Formula One, it's not a collective of the cars that the team are running. It's the points of the highest place car for that team is what contributes to the team championship points in each class. So where we have seen it, we've seen a little bit of funny business between fathers and sons, where fathers all of a sudden realise they can help their sons out and perhaps act as a rear gunner. We've certainly seen that a little bit with different teammates as well.
Well, that will probably come into play later in the season as the points race tighten up and you're running out of opportunities.
That's right. These drivers have still got 3 races here this weekend. They've still got 3 in Toronto, on the streets of Toronto. It's always fantastic to bring these guys up to a street race. And then, of course, 3 more back here in California at Sonoma Raceway. So plenty of opportunities, plenty of points up for grabs. And it's good to see the points tables are so close at this time of the year. No one's really running away with it. But I think there'll just be a few drivers looking for outright glory as well. You know, it's one thing to win a championship, but I guess if you're someone like Jack Yang, who probably thinks the championship title's out of reach, but I could get a few more wins against some of these young guns, that might be the motivating factor. And he's a gold class driver. That's what the G signifies on the side. It indicates a gold class driver for 1500. And Yang, I think, will just be going for broke, as will a few others, as they try and reach the top step of the Radical Cup podium.
Speaking about steps, are any of these drivers poised to take the next step in the racing ladder, moving up from this series?
Well, very, very much so. And Jordan Missig's one, having just done 2 starts in the in the Indy Next series. So Missig is set, and we've got a spin there just underneath the Firestone Bridge.
That's between 3 and 4.
And that was one of the McGoverns. Don't know if it was father or son. But absolutely, you know, there's a number of drivers. I think all the front runners in Pro 1500, you know, the likes of Nick D'Orlando. Well, I mean, there's so many. Evan Slater, all sorts of guys that are talents to watch and people to look out for in years to come. Number of drivers, of course, will just stay in the Radical Cup. You know, they love these cars. We've had drivers that are now on their, would you believe, Jim Booth, who unfortunately isn't with us this weekend. He was due to race but had a small ailment. He's on his 14th radical.
Oh.
But a number of drivers with already their 5th, 5th, 6th radicals. You know, these are guys that have been racing out at the country clubs, places like Spring Mountain, Apex, Autobahn, Atlanta Motorsport Park, all sorts of places. And so they've had the radicals locally. They've stepped up to the National Series, perhaps stepped up to the faster machinery as well. So, yeah.
So some drivers will use it as a stepping stone, and others are content just to go out and race in this group and enjoy themselves and face good, hard competition.
That's it. And Louis Schreiber was just streaking through screen in that white and blue car. Check out his paint job. It was actually designed by his kids. And so it's a bit different to what you'd normally see on a car, but a fun one. I think there's a few good paint jobs, and if you haven't seen these machines up close, come down to the Radical paddock. It's just to the left-hand side as you walk in to the main paddock area, and the drivers and teams extremely friendly. There's no reason not to go and say g'day, ask some questions. For any sim racers out there, you do want to check out Graham Rahal Performance and go and speak to Suelio Almeida. I'm sure he'll give you some time, but he's been overwhelmed with the response that he's got since he's converted to the real world in terms of his racing, and he's really putting all that sim work into good practice. We'll see where he is in terms of the Pro 1340 drivers.
We're in the closing stages, inside 5 minutes left to go in this final practice for the Radical Cup cars.
Yeah, it doesn't, for some reason, we're just not getting times off the number 3, so that'll be interesting to see what that car does by the time it gets into qualifying.
Could be a bad transponder.
Could be, and amazingly, with the modern transponders and subscriptions, you wouldn't believe it can be a disaster when that subscription expires. But Suelio Almeida, definitely one to watch. Black and gold car, and a great kid with a great story. So, what's happened? Well, John Field has gone back to the top of Platinum. He's done a 1:23.1. Louis Schreiber has tried to respond to that. He's just done his personal best of 1:23.5. Clint Field rounds out the top 3. And then in Pro 1340, it's a 1:26.4 for McMurray, 1:27.4 for Anzaldi. I think a few of these guys are just doing longer runs at the moment, just trying to understand what the dynamic of the car is going to be through that long race distance. We've had a spin, and that looks like John Field. John Field's just looped it again, Andretti hairpin. So just over 1 minute remaining, and Phil gets going again. D. Orlando's put in a quick one in Pro 1500, so they're now at a 24 flat, and D. Orlando just 1/10 clear of Jordan Missick, who set the pace early on for quite a significant amount of time in this session. Jack Yang still third quickest in that class. Matt Roma, Spencer Schmidt, and Austin Riley rounding out the top 6. Shout out to Steve Jenks, who's 7th. He's just done his personal best, as Matt Roma does too. And Nick D'Orlando does too. He's now in the 23s. So some quick times, and you can see on the overall chart there, D'Orlando, 5th fastest overall, missing 6. So there's only 4 Platinum class cars with those high horsepower engines ahead of the Pro 1500s. And then Gorski sort of in the thick of that there. That's going to be interesting for qualifying, and a dynamic to look out for, because the grid will be mixed. It's not class, then another class, and then another class. It's absolutely on merit. And so you could see a platinum driver further back in the field or in the mix of some of those 1500s.
Do they line up based on practice times when they go out to qualify, or
because we start from the pit boxes? No, they get launched from the boxes, and the checkered flag is out. So right at the end there, D'Orlando very, very quick in the Pro 1500s, setting the pace going into qualifying this evening. John Field will be the one to keep an eye on later this afternoon as well in Platinum. He was fastest in the SR10s. And it was Chris McMurray in the number 2 who managed to eclipse everyone else. In fact, he was a second faster in the end from Mike Anzaldi. So they're the drivers to look out for at the pointy end of each of the classes. And we'll be back with qualifying at 5 p.m. for the Radical Cup North America Series. The live stream presented by McDonald's. And a fantastic sight there of a few people making that tough trek up the hill.
Yeah, that's for sure. It's a climb. You don't realize how steep it is until you get down to the bottom and look up and think, oh my goodness. Almost like a roller coaster turn.
So a few people starting to jump into the stands just here on the front straightaway. Of course, plenty of action coming up today.
Yeah, practice 1 for Indy next is next. Next is next, and that starts at 1:10. That's a 25-minute session, followed by NTT IndyCar Series practice at 2 o'clock, and then we close out the day with the 2 qualifying sessions. The first of the 2 for the Porsche Sprint Challenge USA West, and the last one for Radical Cup North America.
Well, we've just seen some fast prototypes. It's time to see some fast open wheelers now. Be great to be back here for qualifying, and excited to join you once again up here to give some insight to the Radical Cup North America program.
Tom Dewar, thank you very much for joining us. We look forward to seeing you back this afternoon for your qualifying session, the final on-track event of the day for our race cars here this weekend as part of the Firestone Monterey Grand Prix weekend.